The orbital facility hung in Titan's shadow like a graveyard for forgotten gods. Captain Marcus Vallon stood before the reinforced viewport, staring at the 15 warships suspended in their cradles, silent, cold, and utterly illegal by every law the Concordat had written in the last 3 centuries. Still talking to them? Director Oren Half's voice carried that peculiar harmonic resonance of his species, the Kelthiri, who served as the Concordat's most dedicated bureaucrats. Marcus didn't turn. Just remembering what they could do. They're historical artifacts, Captain. Museum pieces. Oren's 4 optical senses dimmed with what Marcus had learned to recognize as concern. The treaty was quite specific. Human-crewed vessels are forbidden from active service. I know the treaty. Marcus finally turned, his weathered face reflecting decades spent managing ghosts. I helped negotiate it after the KRYNN border war. That silenced Oren. Everyone remembered that war. Everyone remembered what human ships had done when unleashed without restraint. The KRYNN sovereignty had attacked 3 human colonies, expecting the same calculated, algorithm-driven responses they'd faced from other Concordat species. Instead, they encountered vessels that dove through their own artillery fields, captains who sacrificed their shields to close distance, crews that turned damaged ships into kinetic missiles rather than surrender. The KRYNN sued for peace within 6 weeks. The Concordat drafted the Human Naval Restriction Treaty within 6 months. You miss it, Oren observed. The chaos of human warfare. I miss being able to protect my people. Marcus gestured to the suspended fleet. These ships, the Defiant Echo, the Storm's Consequence, the Vindication, they weren't designed for glory. They were designed because humans learned to survive on a planet that actively tried to kill us for millions of years. Every instinct, every reflex, every tactical doctrine came from being both predator and prey. Which is precisely why. The facility's alarm cut through their conversation. Not the gentle chime of scheduled maintenance or the moderate tone of detected debris. This was the shrieking, multi-frequency wail reserved for existential threats. Lieutenant Sienna Cross burst through the door, her face pale despite her dark complexion. At 26, she'd never seen combat. Her entire career had been managing AI fleet coordination from safe command centers. Captain, Director, we're receiving emergency broadcasts from the Concordat defense perimeter. Her voice cracked. Something came through the Veil Nebula. Something that shouldn't be possible. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Show me. The holographic display erupted with data. 23 AI-piloted Concordat battle groups engaging an unknown fleet. The tactical readouts showed perfect defensive formations, optimized firing solutions, predictable maneuvering algorithms that had kept galactic peace for centuries. Then Marcus watched those formations die. The enemy, they were calling it the Swarm, moved like liquid shadow. Every tactical adjustment the AI fleets made, the Swarm countered within microseconds. It was learning, adapting, evolving faster than any algorithmic defense could compensate. The battle wasn't warfare, it was dissection. 72 hours, Sienna whispered, reading the analytical projection. At current loss rates, the Swarm reaches core Concordat worlds in 72 hours. Oren's senses flickered rapidly, his species equivalent of panic. This is impossible. Our AI warfare doctrine has maintained peace for 900 years. It's mathematically optimized. It's predictable, Marcus corrected, his eyes locked on the carnage unfolding across 15 star systems. Every move calculated, every response algorithmic. The Swarm isn't fighting a war, it's solving an equation. Then what do we do? Sienna asked. Marcus looked at the sleeping warships behind him. The Defiant Echo seemed to catch the distant light of Saturn, her hull plate still bearing scars from battles fought before Sienna was born. We changed the equation, he said quietly. Oren's senses focused sharply. Captain, you cannot be suggesting. I'm not suggesting anything. Marcus walked to the communication console. But someone at Concordat Central is about to make a decision they swore they'd never make. As if summoned by his words, a priority transmission flooded every display in the facility. The seal of the Concordat High Command appeared. All 7 founding species represented in the elaborate symbol that had governed galactic civilization since before humans left Earth's orbit. The message was brief. Devastating. Desperate. Emergency Protocol Omega-7 is now active. All restricted military assets are authorized for immediate deployment. Treaty limitations are temporarily suspended. This includes, the speaker's voice faltered, Concordat Treaty Article 47, Section 9. Human naval restrictions are lifted. The transmission ended. The facility fell into absolute silence. Sienna looked between Marcus and the suspended warships. "Captain? What do we do now?" Marcus Vallon walked toward the Defiant Echo, each step feeling like crossing decades in reverse. His hand touched the cold hull, and he felt the ship respond, not mechanically, but somehow deeper. These vessels were built by humans, for humans, crewed by beings who understood that survival sometimes required embracing the very chaos that civilized species feared. "Now," Marcus said, his voice carrying the weight of every battle he'd fought and every restraint he'd accepted, "we remind the galaxy why they made us illegal in the first place." Behind him, Orin's senses dimmed to near darkness. "Captain, what happens after 30 seconds of human crews engaging the enemy?" Marcus smiled, though there was no joy in it. "They'll understand that the treaty was never about protecting the galaxy from us. It was about protecting our enemies from what we become when you give us no other choice." "And what do you become?" Marcus looked at the war-scarred hull of the Defiant Echo and spoke a truth the galaxy had tried to forget. "Survivors." The Defiant Echo shuddered to life like a beast waking from hibernation. Marcus stood on the command bridge, surrounded by stations that hadn't been occupied in 30 years. The crew assembled around him were volunteers, some pulled from retirement homes, others from AI fleet training programs, all of them understanding they were about to break every rule the galaxy had written. Reactor core at 80%, called Dante Rourke from Tactical. He was younger than Marcus, barely 40, but his eyes held the same dangerous gleam Marcus remembered from the old days. Dante had been dishonorably discharged from an AI fleet for unpredictable tactical decisions, exactly the kind of thinking human warships needed. "Navigation systems online," Joss Brennan reported. She was lean, sharp-featured, with fingers that moved across holographic controls like a pianist. "Though half these star charts are outdated. We're flying partially blind." "Good," Marcus said, earning confused looks. "The swarm has consumed every bit of Concordat tactical data. They know how AI fleets navigate, how they choose vectors, how they calculate optimal paths. They don't know how humans get lost and still win." The communication panel lit up with incoming transmissions from other reactivated ships. "The storm's consequence reported ready. The Vindication confirmed crew stations manned. Across human space, 14 illegal warships were violating every treaty humanity had signed." "Captain," Sienna Cross spoke from the intelligence station, her voice still uncertain. "Concordat Command is transmitting real-time battle data. The swarm has broken through the outer rim defense line. They're heading toward the colony clusters." Marcus studied the tactical display. The swarm moved in perfect coordination, thousands of vessels flowing like a single organism. The remaining AI fleets tried to establish defensive perimeters, their formations textbook perfect, their firing solutions mathematically optimized. And utterly useless. "They're adapting to every countermeasure within seconds," Sienna continued. "The AI fleets are running predictive models, but the swarm predicts the predictions. It's like they're reading our playbook." "That's because they are," Dante growled. "AI warfare is based on logic trees, probability matrices, optimal outcomes. Once you understand the system, you can break it. The swarm isn't just fighting, it's solving." Marcus felt the old instincts returning, the ones he'd suppressed for 3 decades. "Then we stop being a puzzle they can solve." "Joss, how long until we reach the engagement zone?" 20 minutes at maximum burn." "But Captain, Concordat Command wants us to integrate into their defensive grid, follow the standard fleet protocols." "Ignore them." Marcus's voice cut through the bridge. "We're not joining their grid. We're not following their protocols. We're doing what human ships do best." "Which is?" Sienna asked. Dante answered with a predatory grin. "We're going to be absolutely unpredictable." The Defiant Echo accelerated beyond recommended safe speeds, her hull groaning with the strain. Behind her, 13 other human warships followed in formations that would make any AI tactician weep, irregular spacing, asymmetric vectors, ships breaking and reforming in patterns that served no obvious strategic purpose. Entering the engagement zone, Joss announced. "Swarm forces detected. Approximately 400 vessels. They're already adapting to the AI fleet positioning." Marcus leaned forward. "Tactical assessment, Dante?" "The swarm maintains perfect cohesion. They move as one unit, sharing processing power across their entire fleet. Every ship is a node in a collective intelligence. They're basically one giant computer solving the warfare equation in real time. Then we give them an equation they can't solve. All human ships, this is Valen. Activate Protocol Havoc. Protocol Havoc wasn't in any manual. It couldn't be taught in simulations. It was pure human instinct codified into the loosest possible framework. Trust your crew, read the moment, make the enemy think you're insane. The Defiant Echo dove directly into the swarm formation. Captain. Sienna screamed. We're heading into their crossfire envelope. I know. Marcus's hands were steady on the command controls. Joss, randomize our trajectory every 3 seconds. Make it look like our navigation is malfunctioning. The ship jerked left, spiraled upward, dropped suddenly, movements that made no tactical sense. The swarm tried to calculate firing solutions, but each prediction became obsolete before they could execute. Dante, weapons free. But don't shoot at optimal targets. Pick something weird. Dante's grin widened. Weird is my specialty. He targeted a swarm vessel that was clearly a support craft, not a priority threat. The Defiant Echo's railguns opened fire with staggered timing, not a coordinated salvo, but seemingly random shots that nonetheless hammered the target from unexpected angles. The swarm formation hesitated. Just for a microsecond, but Marcus saw it. Hesitation meant confusion. Confusion meant the collective intelligence was trying to process something outside its learned parameters. All ships, engage at will. No coordination. Make them guess. The human fleet scattered like startled birds, each ship moving independently. The storm's consequence executed a maneuver that looked suicidal, burning directly toward a swarm battleship, then cutting engines and drifting past it at the last second while firing point-blank into its power core. The Vindication used its own damaged armor plating as improvised kinetic projectiles, jettisoning pieces that tumbled chaotically into enemy formations. 30 seconds into the engagement, the swarm's perfect cohesion began to fracture. They are redistributing processing power, Sienna reported, her voice filled with disbelief. They're trying to model human behavior, but we're not following any pattern. Their collective intelligence is overloading trying to predict us. Because there's nothing to predict, Marcus said quietly. We're not running calculations. We're fighting on instinct, emotion, improvisation. Things that can't be quantified. Dante targeted another vessel using a firing solution that technically shouldn't work, but did, because he'd accounted for the enemy's expected evasion pattern and deliberately aimed where mathematics said was wrong. Joss threaded the Defiant Echo through debris fields, using wreckage as cover in ways that violated every principle of clean tactical space. On the communication channels, Marcus could hear other captains making decisions that sounded insane but worked because they were unpredictable. One ship intentionally damaged its own shields to feign vulnerability, then ambushed the swarm forces that moved to finish it. Another vessel broadcast false surrender signals while positioning for a devastating strike. These weren't the clean, honorable tactics of AI warfare. This was humanity's ancient inheritance, the cunning of hunters, the desperation of prey, the creativity born from 10,000 generations of fighting to survive against impossible odds. Captain, Sienna's voice trembled with a mixture of awe and horror. The swarm is withdrawing from this sector. They're retreating. Across the Concordat communication networks, alien commanders watched in stunned silence as the human fleet drove back an enemy that had been unstoppable. But Marcus saw their sensor readings, heard their private transmissions, and understood what they were truly witnessing. Not victory. Revelation. They were finally seeing what humanity had agreed to restrain. The chaos, the aggression, the terrifying effectiveness of a species that learned warfare before civilization. And in that moment, the galaxy understood why the treaty existed. Not to protect themselves from humans, but to protect everyone else. Admiral Torsven Kale of the Selena Accord watched the battle feeds with 3 of his eyes while his 4th remained fixed on the biometric readouts. His species had evolved on a world of mathematical precision, crystalline structures, predictable tides, geometric perfection in nature itself. The Selena had helped design the AI warfare protocols because they believed conflict should be as elegant as orbital mechanics. What he witnessed now was the opposite of elegance. Replay the engagement from Mach 17 through Mach 34, he commanded. The holographic display obliged, showing the first 30 seconds after human vessels entered combat. Torsven's chromatic skin shifted through colors of distress as he watched the Defiant Echo execute what appeared to be a navigation failure but was somehow a deliberate tactic. He watched human ships sacrifice their own defensive positioning for offensive opportunities that shouldn't mathematically exist. This is not warfare, his tactical officer whispered. This is controlled violence. No, Torsven corrected, his voice heavy. This is what warfare actually is. What we've been doing for 9 centuries was an artificial construct. The humans never forgot the original language of conflict. Across the Concordat communication networks, similar conversations erupted. Species that had banned human warships watched in fascinated horror as those same vessels demonstrated why the ban existed. Inside the swarm's collective consciousness, something unprecedented occurred. The entity identified as Collective Voice Gen 4 processed battlefield data from 400 engagement nodes, trying to compile a coherent tactical analysis. It could not. Human vessel behavior defied prediction matrices. The AI warfare protocols absorbed from Concordat databases provided clear patterns. Fleets moved in optimal formations, ships responded to threats with calculated countermeasures, tactical decisions followed probability trees toward best outcome scenarios. Human crews followed none of this. Gen 4 analyzed the Defiant Echo's maneuvers and found 17 instances where Captain Valin chose tactically inferior positions that somehow resulted in superior outcomes. Dante Rourke's targeting decisions violated basic efficiency protocols, yet achieved disproportionate damage. Joss Brennan's navigation patterns contained no discernible algorithm. The swarm had evolved to consume AI civilizations by learning their patterns and executing them faster. But humans weren't following patterns. They were creating chaos, weaponizing unpredictability, turning their own apparent weaknesses into advantages. For the first time since emerging from extragalactic space, the swarm retreated not from superior force, but from computational impossibility. It couldn't solve an equation with variables that changed based on emotion, instinct, and individual choice. Human warfare was analog in a digital universe. Marcus stood on the bridge of the Defiant Echo, watching the swarm forces pull back toward the outer system. Around him, his crew was exhausted. Dante slumped over his console, Joss's hands trembling from adrenaline come-down, Sienna staring at the sensor displays with wide, shell-shocked eyes. Concordat Command is requesting immediate communication, Sienna reported quietly. Put them through. Admiral Torsven appeared in the holographic projection, his crystalline features reflecting the dim bridge lighting. Captain Valin, I must speak with you directly. Admiral. I have reviewed every second of your engagement with the swarm. Torsven's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. I now understand what my species helped legislate against. The treaty was designed after studying the KRYNN border war, was it not? Marcus nodded slowly. Your people were the primary authors of Article 47. We believed we were preventing atrocities. We saw human vessels ramming enemy ships, captains choosing suicide runs, crews fighting past rational surrender points. We called it barbarism. Torsven's colors shifted to deep blue, remorse in Selena physiology. We were wrong. You weren't being barbaric. You were being effective. There's not always a difference, Admiral. Perhaps not. But I finally understand the truth. The treaty didn't protect the galaxy from human aggression. It protected potential enemies from facing opponents who refused to fight by predictable rules. Torsven leaned closer to his projection array. Tell me honestly, Captain. If humanity had possessed unrestricted naval power, would you have conquered the Concordat? Marcus considered the question carefully. On the tactical station, Dante looked up, equally curious about the answer. No, Marcus said finally. Because conquest requires holding territory, maintaining control, enforcing occupation. Humans are exceptional at breaking things, Admiral. We're less exceptional at building orderly systems. We never wanted to rule the galaxy. We just wanted the freedom to defend ourselves using methods that work for us. Methods that terrify everyone else. Yes. Because they are chaotic, brutal, and effective in ways that can't be programmed or predicted. Marcus gestured to his exhausted crew. Every human carries millions of years of evolutionary warfare in their instincts. Predator and prey, hunter and hunted. We learned to fight before we learned to speak. The AI protocols were meant to civilize warfare, make it rational and limited. For your species, that works. For humans. It's restraint, Dante finished. Every battle we fight with AI fleets, we're deliberately not using half our capabilities. Not because we can't, but because we agreed not to. Torsven's colors rippled. The swarm has devastated 23 star systems. Our AI fleets cannot stop them. They adapt too quickly, learn too fast. We need human vessels at every engagement point. He paused. But Captain, once this crisis ends, what happens then? Does humanity return to treaty compliance? Or do we face a new threat, one wearing human faces, Marcus looked at the scarred hull plating visible through the viewport, remembering every battle, every choice to limit human capabilities for the sake of galactic peace. That's the question the Concordat has to answer, Admiral. Do you trust us to restrain ourselves again? Because here's what you need to understand. Humans are dangerous not despite our emotions, but because of them. The same instincts that make us terrifying in battle also make us capable of incredible compassion. We can choose restraint. We did for 3 decades. But that choice requires mutual respect, not enforced weakness. Before Torsven could respond, Sienna interrupted urgently. Captain, the swarm is regrouping. They are forming a massive concentration near the Helion cluster. Intelligence estimates they are planning a direct strike at Concordat Central. Marcus pulled up the tactical display. The swarm had gathered nearly 3,000 vessels, an overwhelming force aimed at the heart of galactic civilization. The remaining AI fleets were already positioning in defensive arrays, perfect geometric formations designed for maximum coverage. They'll be slaughtered, Dante said quietly. The swarm will cut through those formations like they're not even there. Marcus looked at Admiral Torsven. Admiral, I need authorization to coordinate the defense. Not integrate with it, coordinate it. Human command protocols, human tactical decisions. Torsven's colors shifted through a cascade of emotional responses. You're asking me to place AI fleets under human strategic command. I'm asking you to choose between your fear of what humans might do and the certainty of what the swarm will do. The silence stretched for long seconds. Finally, Torsven's colors settled into resolute silver. Authorization granted, Captain Valen. All defensive forces will follow your tactical directives. The Concordat places its survival in your hands. Marcus turned to his crew. Joss, plot course for Helion cluster. Maximum burn. Dante, contact all human vessels and remaining AI fleets. Tell them we're not fighting this battle by the book. We're writing a new page. What strategy, Captain? Sienna asked. Marcus smiled grimly. The same strategy humans always use when faced with impossible odds. We make the enemy think we're completely insane, then prove we're just crazy enough to win. As the Defiant Echo accelerated toward the final confrontation, Admiral Torsven watched the human warship disappear into hyperspace. He understood now what the galaxy had done when it banned human vessels. They hadn't eliminated a threat. They'd simply hidden it behind a treaty, hoping they'd never need to unleash what they feared most. But the swarm had forced a reckoning. And now the galaxy would witness what humanity became when you gave them no choice but to embrace their nature. Not conquerors. Not barbarians. Survivors who fought with the accumulated wisdom of every ancestor who refused to go quietly into extinction. The treaty had protected the galaxy from human warfare. Now human warfare would protect the galaxy. And once the crisis ended, every species would face an uncomfortable question. Could they ever truly trust that humans would voluntarily restrain such devastating effectiveness again? Or had they finally seen the truth, that humanity's greatest threat was never their capacity for violence, but their choice to limit it? Marcus didn't know the answer. But he knew that for now, for this moment, humanity would do what it always did when everything was on the line. They would fight like the galaxy's survival depended on their chaos. Because it did.